So I'm going to pause right here for a second and see if we were able to answer our Mentimeter poll. We'll see. If you're just joining, by the way, this Mentimeter poll allows us to just answer a couple questions. Okay, some of us got to it. Okay, that's good. I'm glad some of you figured it out. Thank you. Have you ever participated in a citizen science project before? There is a QR code, so if that's easier to use, feel free to do so right now. There are a couple questions, so it'll take you a moment to get through it. But if I can, I'll go backwards and see if anyone else was able to answer them by the end of the call, okay? Then we also have, are you a... what are you? So we've got citizen scientists on the line, we got librarians and library staff, we got teachers, we got student, and we've got troop leader. And now we've got more citizen scientists. No bored people on the internet. Huh, not this time. Well, okay. That's okay. We'll live. Also, I wanted to know where you will be. And it looks like no one's going to be in Phoenix. So hopefully I can adjust this, or so far anyway, no one's going to be in Phoenix. Hopefully I can adjust this, like the way I describe this, to be very clear that anyone can join from wherever you are. So I can answer questions about the general situation, but I will use examples from Phoenix if that's all right with everyone. Okay. So hopefully that is in the clear there. Okay, cool. Outside of Phoenix. Okay, but where outside of Phoenix? So we got Minnesota, Ohio. Oh, just Arizona, somewhere else. Cool. Okay, that'll be good then. We're still in the same boat. At a library, another state, Missouri, Indiana. Okay. Raleigh. I never know how to pronounce it. Let's see, what just got added? North Carolina, Richmond. Awesome. Virginia. Okay, cool. I'm bye, Virginia. I hope y'all do well, even though I'll be competing against you in Phoenix. Outside, you'll be going outside. Jersey City. Okay. Since we have more people answering, let me go back in time for a moment. Okay, so we got more citizen scientists, more teachers and educators, and then all of you have participated in SitSci before. Awesome. Okay, trying one more moment of this. I think we should be in the clear though. Okay. All right, we got 17 responses. That's great. All right, so I'll pause here. We'll go back to the slides, and if I remember, we'll come back to this just in case more people have answered it, okay? All right, so back to what the point is. So what even is the City Nature Challenge? I know that you all are saying that you are citizen scientists already. I'm curious if you're already familiar with the City Nature Challenge. So if you're super familiar, let me know in the chat. Or if you are not super familiar, either one, feel free to write that in the chat, and I'll kind of adjust based on what we know. The one thing I will mention is right off the bat is that we do have 2 QR codes here. If you're looking at this on a computer and you have your phone next to you, your smartphone, you can scan these so you can download the iNaturalist app right now. So feel free to do that. There will be a moment where we can do that as well later on. Okay, so first and foremost, City Nature Challenge is a specific weekend. So we're looking at April 26th through the 29th. So it's very soon. It's coming up in 2 weekends. And it'll be really fun, but it is that one weekend. We can't do anything outside of that weekend other than the couple days after the City Nature Challenge. There are a bit of things that you can do, which I'll come back to, okay? So after knowing what weekend it is, let's also talk about where it came from. So this is a program that was designed and built out after a test run in 2 cities. So the Los Angeles County and in San Francisco, they ran a competition between the 2 of them to test out how it would go and see how fun it was. I don't know if there was an intent to make it a global contest, but now it has become that. And this time there's over 500 cities participating. There's a lot of cities participating. It's a big deal. And there's up to, I think there's like 2 million observations last year. So it's a wild weekend for iNaturalist. They better up their server value or something. Now, because I'm specifically a Phoenician, in 2023, so last year, we placed 54th in the world. So if you remember what your city did, feel free to let me know in the chat. But we placed 54th in the world, which means we did pretty good. And that was out of 482. So I'd count that as a big success on my mind. Now, we are trying to aim to higher this year. When we get back into Phoenix, for myself anyway, when I get back there, we'll be definitely pushing for more. And I hope that we can make that happen. If your city did better than this, I don't want to hear it. Maybe I do, I kind of do. If you do remember what your city did, feel free to put it in the chat. I'm kind of curious. I could also look it up later. For Phoenix, this is who is involved. I'll skip over it a little briefer, but there's us right there. Hooray, SciStarter. Another big one for this project is the Educating Children Outdoors organization. Our friend Kathy, our friend of SciStarter, who's also our main organizer for this. So doing some good work out there. And then how do we do it? So I just mentioned iNaturalist a million times. So if you're familiar with iNaturalist already and with SciStarter, that's great. We have the iNaturalist project on SciStarter, and it's on our affiliates page. So we have some extra instructions for you on there if you do want to look at a more guided version, which is what Roland just put in the chat for you. Okay. If you want to download the app, again, there are those QR codes. I'll give you the links to the QR codes momentarily as well. So essentially, what we're using iNaturalist for is that it is a kind of a dumping ground for observations. It's the place where a lot of scientists use this. Half of the scientists I talk to automatically know what this is. Kind of depends on whether or not they're a biology type person or if they're like physics, depends. But if they are scientists, likelihood is pretty high that they're going to know what this is because they actually use it a lot. It's a very, very valuable site and app. It not only does it let you observe things and then just post it to the world of naturalists and scientists, but it also allows you to improve on your ability to observe and identify species. So your observations, if they're not named, for example, they're not going to be put into research grade data sets, right? It's all based off of, hey, I'm making a casual observation here. I think it's this kind of species, but that does not mean that you're impacting research. It doesn't impact research until it becomes something called research grade. And so it's a network of scientists and naturalists who are working together to build up data sets, okay? You're taking pictures, maybe it's a no big deal casual grade, and maybe it stays that way forever, or your pictures are great and they turn into research grade. Some of mine have never turned into research grade and they shouldn't be research grade, so totally makes sense. It's also a nice way because it's kind of a social network, so you can actually talk to people through it. I write journals for our City Nature Challenge. It's a nice community. So why do we actually care about iNaturalist? Like, what does it actually accomplish? This is my favorite example. There's a million of them, but in case you need an example to tell your friends about, you might already know this one because it's so funny. But there was a very famous, infamous, I should say, toilet weasel found in, I think it was in Brazil. There was someone in 2011, Juan, who went into the bathroom and discovered a weasel on top of the toilet. And so he snapped a few photos. The weasel was like, hey, what are you doing? I don't want my photo taken, ran out the window, whatever, and escaped. And that was it. I think at that point, he had put it on Twitter first, and then found out about iNaturalist and put it on iNaturalist. And then after searching online, he came across a 2014 paper, this is way later, right, about the extremely rare Colombian weasel, which had the exact same dark chest patch as the weasel in his photos. So he corrected his ID. So he had put it on iNaturalist afterwards and then decided, wait a second, this is totally wrong ID. I bet it's this thing that's super rare. And then scientists were very excited. They're like, excuse me, you found this? We thought it was extinct. It was a big rediscovery of species that we just never really had a chance to see much of. There's so few of them in the world. And so being able to be a part of this history of saying, we haven't lost a species, it's okay. we can still acknowledge it as existing. We have existing photos of it even, like that's a pretty big deal. And so it went into history as the hashtag toilet weasel and went viral for a little while. And hello, right back at you in the chat. Good to see you. All right, so if you haven't already, download iNaturalist. That's number one. So on my iNaturalist app, when I downloaded it, I make sure I have my username right. So you're required to make username, password, your emails associated with it. When you create an account, that's where your username comes from, right? So if you already have an iNaturalist username, awesome. Because here's the next step that makes a difference for SciStarter and the Citizen Science Month, 1 million acts of science, making sure that you're involved in that. We need you to add that iNaturalist username to your SciStarter account. So I'm actually going to switch screens for a moment. There we go. And go to SciStarter. So if you are on SciStarter and you have an account, if you go to My Info and Settings and scroll all the way to the bottom, all the way down, you'll run into this thing called affiliation integration. I'll zoom in because that's super tiny, I bet. There we go. Okay, so we got affiliation integration near the bottom. That is where you're going to add your iNaturalist username, okay? You can also add your Zooniverse username, by the way, if you'd like, if that applies to you anyway. So your iNaturalist username here, once you've done that, you only have to do that once, and that's it. That's all you got to do. So you have now your iNaturalist account, you have a SciStarter account, the username exists on both sites so that we can track it, and that just means all of your observations will automatically be counted to the 1 million acts of science. So you don't need to worry about telling us later about how well you did. You don't need to count the amount of observations you did. You don't even have to look at it twice. You just do your job during City Nature Challenge and have a great time. And then you'll just let us know via a little nice digital handshake. You don't have to do any work. All right, and that's what it looks like again if you saw it briefly, but it's affiliation integration, it links the account, all good to go. Now, after that, if my cursor works, that'd be great. Once you're on iNaturalist, you can join the project that you'd be a part of. So for me, it was the City Nature Challenge 2024, Greater Phoenix Area. If you need the umbrella project, by the way, I'm on the umbrella project, so I'll go ahead and bring that up for you. It is projects. That was Eurasia. Oh, I guess maybe I'm not on it anymore. Okay, I might have gotten rid of it for an example. City Nature Challenge. And then hopefully umbrella will come up. Global project. We got the global project, so I would like that to be in a new tab because that one's good too. But there is also a umbrella one. Umbrella. Okay, well, I'll find it later and send it in the follow-up email then because I thought I had it here, but maybe not. Okay, so if you are not in a location that has the City Nature Challenge, by the way, that's why I'm also opening this one up. So I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in. This one is if your city is not currently involved. So I'm gonna drop this in the chat. If you realize later, oh man, I missed out, it's not actually happening here, I'll help organize it next year. That's okay. You can still count for this one. It's just global. So you participate as a global city and not as a independent organization. Okay. All right. So once you've done that, you found your project, then that's pretty much it. So you're working through the 26th through 29th and actually participating. What does it mean to participate? Well, there's a couple things. So for one, this is a very highly educational and fun activity, especially if we're going into the late spring and then early summer. In Phoenix specifically, we have different rules because it's already in the 90s. For everyone else in the world, I hope is not the case for you, or for a lot of you anyway. And instead, you just take some time outdoors and you have a good time. And that includes some things that you can do to make sure that kids can be involved. And also, if anyone does not have a smartphone, there are workarounds for that. Okay, so I can talk more about those if we need more time. But the basics of it is children can't have their own accounts. So having a teacher account or a family account on iNaturalist is super great. And for digital cameras, instead of using your cell phone, which would be using the app, you can also just use the iNaturalist.org. You can absolutely add things up onto your iNaturalist site. Okay. Also, feel free to let me know if you have any questions in the chat, by the way, because I'm giving you a lot of information. There will be a recording, of course, but feel free to ask questions as they come up. So given that you already know about citizen science, I'm wondering if you know a lot of the tips and tricks about iNaturalist in general. So I'll give you a heads up on what we know based on how to actually submit an observation, and also some tips on photography. So we've got, if you're on the app, it's super easy to use. So when you start opening it, you'll just see a big plus button, essentially add observation, or at least it'll be very obvious depending on what type of app you have. So I have an iPhone, which is not this one. This is actually done on an Android. So you are going to either take a photo and you can choose an image. Personally, I just snap a bunch of photos and then go in later and to add them up and try to identify them in that moment. I don't usually try to do it all in one place. I don't take the picture, try to identify at the same time. Oftentimes those are animals maybe running away. There's just not enough time, or I just want to enjoy the hike. And so I just do the process of getting the pictures, then I upload later. So I need to add in information too. So if you have a picture, that's great. So the other items you would need to get are what did you see? Double check that your time and date is correct. Your location needs to be accurate. If you want to hide your location, if you're essentially, if this is a child implementing this and so you want to hide that location, you can hit obscure. Or if you're dealing with an endangered or vulnerable animal or plant or whatever, you can obscure it to prevent poaching. So if you do see something that is in danger of being poached later, then please do obscure it so we don't know exactly where they are. It's good to observe them and note that they're in the population, but obscuring is a good idea. And so once you've done that, you can also write and that's where this is, by the way, location visibility open. You can change it to obscured. It is captive or cultivated. This is if you're looking at plants that are placed there by humans, that would be captive or cultivated. I would advise against doing most of those observations in general, unless they're for practice, and then just make sure they're marked as such so that you don't end up having a ton of plants and animals that should not be on there, like your dog. Don't put your dogs in there. So we'll talk more about that too in a bit. So your date and time should be accurate. On a cell phone, it should be automatic too. It shouldn't be, you don't need to like find your location. The what did you see is going to be the toughest spot. So iNaturalist will make suggestions, and if you don't agree with them, then you can search it for yourself. But the best thing possible is just move it past plant or animal. So as long as you don't leave it blank, you leave it at plant, animal, fungi. If you make sure that something is listed there, that's super important, okay? Because that allows us to track it more efficiently to actually find identifications for you. So once you've labeled it as something, that allows the rest of the team participating in your City Nature Challenge to go in and help you identify as the weekend goes on, okay? Also, once you're done looking at it, you feel good about it, you can hit the correct button. If you answer it wrong, by the way, like if you found the exact species, you were super excited, you got it right, and someone comes in and says, actually, no, that's a different species, that's okay. It's okay if that happens. So as close to species as you can get is great. If you get it wrong, it's no big deal because it just will never make it to research grade. We'll just move it down and change the species ID and it'll be all good. Okay. If you are using a computer instead, still super easy. Even if you're using a phone and putting it up on the computer, that's also totally fine. You just bring your computer, bring your photos onto your computer, and then you do the upload arrow. So on mine, it was right here, upload. And it looks like this. So I just drag a bunch of stuff over here. I don't have an example photo for you, unfortunately. But once you've done that, the big key things there are if you used a digital camera, your location's not accounted for. So you do need to find the location. In this case, you can use a range though, instead of just a pinpointed location. And so if you just want to say, I was in the general area of the White Tank Mountains. Okay, that's a good enough region. That's pretty close. So that is totally okay. And then any other information that's missing is important. So time and date, location, those are the biggies. And look in identifying it beyond plant or animal would be great. Once you've done that, and it goes through the same process, by the way, species name will give you the, we think it's this type of answer. And then you can just submit observation, you're all done. Ta-da! Okay, we'll go back for a second. Any questions about how to use iNaturalist so far? You can record sounds too, by the way. There's a lot of little neat things in there. So whatever you choose to do is great, I'm sure. Okay. Okay, cool. If there is anything, I will interrupt myself and pause to be able to answer your question, but of course. So observation guidelines. So ASU, SciStarter, and the exploring or educating children outdoors, eco explorers is another term for it, have developed a set of observation guidelines to be able to help you do the work and do it correctly. So these are pretty much for everyone. I don't think there's anything too specific to Arizona. So we can pretty much go through it, but the key things are people, pets, and potted plants. Avoid the peas. You don't want to take pictures of people. We know how many people there are. We don't want to take pictures of pets because they're not natively there. We put them there. Potted plants, same situation. We put them there. They're domesticated plants. Same with domesticated animals. We don't need to add them in. Now, I will say Tempe and Arizona, Phoenix area in general has this feral cat situation going on, and I do think those are worthwhile adding because they are like they're feral, they don't belong to people, and so taking note of those ones I do think are technically useful, but there are a few occasions for those things, so that happens. Or if you're getting picky, like you think doves don't belong because they're not actually native to the area, you can they're introduced and they've been there for a while. That's okay to add, but the more obvious ones of landscaping, potted plants, plastic plants, I saw that last year. I would avoid that. It's not the best. And people, don't take a picture of your brother making a funny face. Not useful. Yeah. So, oh, and that's that line about domestic and introduced species. So domestic ducks, totally fine. They're acceptable. It's okay. Awesome. Photo tips. When you're taking pictures, photos should be in good quality. So you should have a good composition, good color, good clarity. We actually have, and Roland, apologies, can you run onto YouTube? There's a video of our like photography 101 with one of our buddies who's an iNaturalist photographer. His name is Damon Tihei. Oh, awesome. Sweet. If you watch that one's way more in depth about photography skills. So if you do want to go like hardcore into like, how do I take the best pictures? I would say that's your best resource. So Roland will drop that link in the chat for you and I'll add it to the follow-up email as well. However, there are some just like easy things to mention there too. So if you take multiple photos of one organism, that's awesome because then we get potentially different sides of the animal, different location or different perspectives. And you can focus in on certain types of the limbs on the animal of like what is particular about this one that'll help us define the species. So it's all about trying to figure out what species it is, which means multiple angles, multiple pictures, all good things. Animals do run away though, so it happens, but try your best. Oh, awesome. Okay, so Roland found that video. It's the SciStarter Live number 43. Here's how to take great photos with your phone that can be used for science. You can watch that later. Also, looking at the habitat of the animal is a good idea. For a plant, this is like looking at the different angles of the plant, like right on top of the plant, looking at a leaf, looking at the plant as a whole. All these different angles and perspectives are very helpful. Let's see. Yes, okay. And then the other thing is if you have something for scale, so when you go outside and you have like maybe a mini ruler or a pencil or whatever, something where the scale is pretty much known, that is really useful. It's also really useful for focus too. So if you have like a piece of paper that you're using as scale, then you can like hold it behind the plant and it kind of helps you focus the plant. So if you have tools like that, you can use your hand too for that. If you have tools like that, that's super useful to have out in the field with you. Okay, if you want to go out in a group, so if any of you are educators and library staff, I saw some of you on here, if you want to make sure a group is totally viable as an option, you totally can. The problem is that we want to make sure that we don't take the exact same observations. And so there are a couple ways to do that, whether it be, here's a bunch of cameras, digital cameras, go out, go wild, bring it back in, and then we'll submit all of them. Or you can split the trail up. So you can decide like certain people can go to different locations and then they determine what's in that area and then they come back and that's it. And you go to a different area. You can also split the observations up by type of organism. So you could have some people working on identifying plants, some people identifying the mammals, some people identifying amphibians. If you have a lot of amphibians or reptiles, you can split them up in that manner. Birds are a really good one, just like you're only in charge of birds because that one's tough too. So it's like a scavenger hunt to figure out how to get the best pictures of birds without them flying away, and insects. So there's a lot of options to like kind of prioritize and focus different people on different tasks if you're doing a group activity. And please use them because I think it is really an educational opportunity to be able to be focused on one type, and then you learn a lot about the species available in the area. Okay, so those were some of the examples. You can also just split up the trail. So one of you takes everything on the right, one on the left, all good. If you have more advice about that too, about working groups, feel free to let me know because I'd love to add more advice there. We have pretty much these are like our two biggest ones. They're the most obvious. If you do have ways that you've done in the past, I'd love to hear about them. All right, be respectful of nature. We do want to be really respectful and we don't want to be anywhere where we shouldn't be. So if you're at a trailhead that says closed, it's closed. Please don't end up going somewhere where you shouldn't be. So if you end up in an area that's private property, just be aware that this is not meant to be like a race to make sure you get everything. It doesn't matter where it is. It's a reasonable race to find the things that live around you. It does not mean that you are breaking any rules, regulations, laws, etc., or endangering yourself. So please make sure to make that a point for anyone who's participating with you or around you. We also don't want to feed or touch or try to interact too much with any of the animals. You don't know what they need at this point, and so they might not want your attention. There are some people who are trained to handle certain animals, and in that case, then fine. But if you're trained, that's good. There's a difference between just kind of messing with an animal versus trained and know how to observe by holding. So like I've seen pictures from people who are super well versed in amphibian projects and they know how to like hold a frog and observe from multiple angles to get like the best observation. But if that's not you, it's not you. Okay. For iNaturalist, you can, so there's a couple of tricks there just to make sure that you make the most of it. So if you're on iNaturalist for one picture where you have multiple organisms, you can submit, you'll submit one observation, one organism. It won't let you pick multiple animals or plants. So you'll submit the same picture for two observations, but it will be for two different types of organisms, if that makes sense. So I have a picture of a cactus with a bee on it. I submit one picture, I say, it's a bee. The next one I say, it's a cactus, but it's the same picture. That's okay. That works. Don't leave your observation as unknown. Yeah, so as long as you put plant, animal, fungi, as long as you get there, that's good. The farther you can go towards species, that would be great. It also is a good lesson in taxonomic levels, if any of you are interested in teaching the taxonomic levels. You also do need to include date, time, and location on all your observations. I mentioned it earlier pretty specifically, and I do mean it because if you don't do that, it doesn't actually get submitted properly. You'll get a question mark and you'll be like, why hasn't anyone looked at this? And then I'll be like, well, you didn't give them enough information. It's not valuable data unless it has all those things. And remembering too that you can obscure it or like make it unidentifiable location-wise, that's still okay. It's still a logged location. Okay. All right, so those are a lot of tips. I also, for any of you, again, if libraries, I know I saw some of you, there are citizen science kits that are aimed towards iNaturalist. So the Exploring Biodiversity one is particularly helpful, but even the Observing Pollinators one is useful for this. So if you have library kits in your local library or you work at a library with them, this is a great time to try to bring them out a little bit more and get the people around you a little bit more well-versed in how to use one. So it's a great opportunity for that too. You can find out where they are at library locations and and then you'll be able to figure out which libraries to go to. You can also learn about what the library kits are on that webpage. Okay, so I did the photography 101 sort of, and you have a video. Here's just some images just to clear something up. So whole plant, close-up of defining features, that's a big one. If you have animals, defining features, big deal. Again, using scale is important. So if you have a piece of paper or your hand to focus the organism, that, or usually a plant in this case, then that would be really helpful. If you have like a pen or a coin, I'll be bringing out a little baby ruler with me, which really helps too. So if you have a ruler especially, that'd be pretty nice to identify. Okay, here's the Arizona specific thing. But if any of you live in pretty hot climates, just be aware that this probably applies to you too. You want to make sure you are super prepared. Meaning you have water, okay? You need to make sure you have water. Binoculars are very helpful. If you have binoculars, bring them. If you don't, that's okay. I don't own fancy ones. I have ones that I use on occasion. Or even the kitty ones, like the super plasticky ones, they're still useful. And they can be used for scale too, if you want to. You do want to bring your phone or your camera. If you have a camera, you should bring extra battery. So you don't want to walk out there and be like, oh, I forgot how to take observations. Sunscreen, big deal for everyone. A hat, that's why I wore this. This is what I'll be wearing for all of the 26th through the 29th. A flashlight and black light. So if you go out in the nighttime, so in Arizona especially, we have lovely scorpions. And so having a black light's useful because then you can identify them very quickly and not step on them. If you are in a hot place, again, this is really helpful to bring a cooling towel or a bandana or an ice pack. So all these things are very helpful for yourself, but also because your phone overheats. My phone has overheated on many occasions. So if any of you are expecting to have pretty warm weather during that time, even if it's not Arizona, it might still be warm enough, right? So if it's warm enough, then you might want to take a break and make sure that your phone cools down in between observations. Okay, awesome. And then you want to let someone know where you'll be. So make sure you're not going out alone. Make sure you know someone knows where you are, share your location, etc. And then the big idea is stay hydrated, be safe. It's all about just having fun outside and helping us understand what our wildlife looks like everywhere in the world. So it should be a very, very fun time. All right, you know how to take pictures. You know how to make observations. You know some photography tips. What now? Once your observations are in there, as I've mentioned, that they might be casual grade, like no big deal type pictures, but we want to move them to research grade as much as possible. So the better pictures you have, the better chance they are of getting a research grade, because that means they're very identifiable as a specific species. So it's someone suggesting your an ID for you, or maybe accepting the one that you had. So it's like, yes, oh, I totally agree. That is definitely a saguaro cactus. Yes. However, that is also a process that happens after the City Nature Challenge. So during that 26th to 29th period, you are doing all the observations. That's great. And you can also be doing the second part, but for a couple days after the City Nature Challenge until the 1st, you can be, or sorry, May 5th, excuse me, until May 5th, you can help identify the observations. So from the 30th to May 5th, we'll be going online in every location, trying to make sure that our identifications are not just blank, or it's a plant, it's a bird. We can try to narrow it down a little bit more, because the better the research grade level, the more research grade projects or observations you have, the better your chances are at getting a good score on your City Nature Challenge, your city getting a higher ranking, right? So should be fun. This is like so for me, this is kind of the tougher part, in general, just because I'm not super fluent in species. But I can go through and like double check that things are marked as like plant or animal, right? So even someone who's not really fluent in the different types of species, that's totally okay. You can go in and there's some pretty obvious ones that people are just very quickly making observations and moving on. And while that's okay, we do want to make sure that they're supported and they have the right answer by the end so that their iNaturalist observations are actually useful and not just sitting, right? Okay, and then if any of you are in areas where you want to host events for ID parties, that's what Phoenix is doing. So you'll see a little breakdown of what events we're having in a bit. And that is one of them. That'll be really fun. It'll be on not SciStarter Live, but it'll be on the 30th. And so if any of you want to join, but you're from a different location, that's okay. We'll forgive you. You're welcome to join and just listen to some music while we share pictures of some fun ones and see how it goes. Okay, this won't apply to most of you, but if any of you are making your way over to Arizona anytime, this is a whole year event. There are saguaros that are diseased. So if you somehow find yourself in a place where there are saguaros, which would be the Southwest, if you see any that have illnesses on them, like they just don't look healthy, if you take a picture of those on iNaturalist, you can actually add them to another project, which is called the Saguaro Snapshot Challenge. And it's a great one because we're trying to identify how intense or how widespread this illness is. It's like I think it's it's some form of disease that's not helping them out. So if you do join that one, if you do end up in Arizona any time of the year, it doesn't matter when, that one's also helpful. And it's out of the ASU West Valley campus. So fun stuff there. Okay, I'm gonna pause. I've been talking for a really long time. Are there any questions from anyone in the peanut gallery? Also, if you'd like to speak instead of typing, because I know that's tougher, I'm just gonna go ahead and hit allow to talk for everyone. So you'll show up as ability to unmute. So feel free. If you have questions, I'd love to hear them. And then I'll go through what you see on the slide, which is, oh, whoops, sorry. I think I hit a couple buttons twice, so apologies if you got a second message. Okay, so it should have just said you're allowed to unmute. Any questions? I'm doing such a great job of explaining everything. Okay, if you say so. I have questions. I don't. I asked all my questions. All right, let me go back to see if oh yeah, go ahead.
মার
What was that?
হচ্ছে ওই ব্রেনের রক্ত এখনো জমিয়ে আছে।
I'm so sorry, Ruja. Can you type yours? Actually, I can't fully understand what you're saying.
ব্রেনের মাথায় এখনো রক্ত জমে আছে। এখন এইটা হচ্ছে তোমার হচ্ছে ওই ছাড়তে কিছুদিন সময় লাগবে। মানে
I'm gonna oh, I'm sorry. I just might have kicked shoot. Can you type your message, Ruja? Because I definitely cannot quite understand what you are saying because I definitely not. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. All right, I'll briefly talk about this slide, but since most of you, it won't apply to you. For anyone who's watching later from Phoenix, these are events happening these next 2 weeks that you can take part in. So if any of you are still trying to figure out what to do event-wise, like if you want to host anything, that's awesome. Please do. These are examples of what we're doing. So I have the Maricopa County Parks, which is Maricopa County, which encompasses most of the greater Phoenix area. They're hosting discovery stations and hikes to help people learn how to use iNaturalist. And so if you are connected to any form of parks and recreation where you can just have some people well-versed in iNaturalist be available and just make it public that they are available, that's a great example. There are certain talks across different locations, like at libraries, that they do host talks about science where you can just kind of say, hey, can we do a little special for the City Nature Challenge and teach people how to get set up with iNaturalist? That's also great. I'm doing that with Burton Barr Central Library in Phoenix at an event called the Science Cafe. So I'll be there for that. There are also events that are tangential, so things that you can actually participate regardless of who you are. So on April 22nd, which I'll resend that one actually, because in the chat, it's all of them all together. The one that I'm resending after Roland's message, this one, That one is a library network webinar, but it's about rewilding. So if you have any interest in like building a pollinator garden or learning how to bring more wildlife and native plants into your space, whether it's your yard or if it's a community garden, etc., that is a great opportunity to learn about those things. So please join us. But it also heavily relates to the native plants in your area. So if you want to just become more well-versed in like finding resources for those types of things, and making use of your library of your gardens, then it might be a really fun one to take part in. The other ones I have on here are more library workshops. So I'm visiting libraries through that weekend, Thursday through Sunday, to do workshops on getting started with iNaturalist, what we're looking for, and then sending them out to take observations from where they are in that moment, or also if they are too warm, because it'll be in the 90s for us, there'll be a you now know, now go home and take observations in your neighborhood, drink some water, and then go out tomorrow morning to finish it during a lighter, not as hot time. We also have the participating parks set up where we will have like signs out in front of a bunch of them. So if you are interested in working with parks again, having a sign out in front to just say, download iNaturalist and take a bunch of pictures during this time, it might be enough motivation to push people to participate if they'd never heard of it. Or if they had heard of it and they just needed a little sign to get them started. We also have a April 30th, that's the City Nature Challenge ID party. It's specific to the Phoenix City Nature Challenge, but if you join and just want kind of some help to figure out how to best help identify different things on there, we're happy to answer questions there too. And it won't just be me, it'll be some of the more like more knowledgeable ones, like the master naturalists we work with from Arizona. They'll be more helpful than what I can do. We also have a lot of events through the Arizona State University campus and their alumni association, as well as more of the Maricopa County Parks Association through there. So we have a website with all those events and trainings if you're curious. So that said, I think that leads us. Yeah, okay, so I already asked about questions and there was nothing, but our offer still stands. We got time. Okay. Oops, wrong way. Here's a reminder of the everywhere events, by the way. I'll leave this up for a moment. If you have any questions about anything else coming up for the rest of the month, I'm also happy to answer those too. That should be good stuff. Okay. All right, these last two, so on our last two Tuesdays, that would be the 23rd and the 30th, we do have 2 more SciStarter lives before the end of the month. So if you want to join those, you can always join those. And you should have seen them available actually on the Zoom enrollment for this one too. Okay, cool. All right, so that's about it. Do I need to show, if any of you want to see any particular slides again, I'm happy to go back and show those slides. And I'm also happy to just answer any other questions. Otherwise, since we're a little bit early, I'll close this out at the 50 marks. You get an extra 10 minutes back, unless we get deep into some questions. Would you like to see a scary cat-like, I forgot what it's called. Let me go back. I have a cat that my brother found, and it was pretty cool. So I'll show you all. Not edit, I just want to go to observations. There we go. Oops, no, grid. I am not a master of observations. There it is, the bobcat. If that excites anyone, it should, because it's super cool looking. It's the bobcat. It was checking out my brother's dogs. Okay. That was my last personal story of the day. All right. If there aren't any more questions, that's fine too. I'm a little surprised. This one's usually like a, what about if you see a, what if, so I'm impressed. Y'all absorb the information well. If you do want to use any of our resources, we do have 2 different resources that I think, yeah, okay, I'll drop them in the chat one more time. Sorry, Roland, I skipped over them, or I saw them go in and then I forgot to mention. There's me researching caterpillars. Okay, so in the chat right now, oh, that wasn't it. How'd that happen? There we go, copy. Okay, so social media resources and training resources, those are 2 items you can use if you want to adjust them. You won't be able to edit them, but you can download things and put them in a Canva and update them to be about your location, create posters off of there based off of those etc. You can find a lot of what I presented on in there too. So if you do want to reference any of this material, that's also helpful. Again, it'll be in the follow-up email, so I'll help you out with there too. Okay. All right. Well, in that case, I'll stick around, but for another 2 minutes until the end of the until the 50 mark. But I'm super excited to start doing City Nature Challenge. So I hope you all are involved, and I look forward to seeing all the observations come in on the 29th, or by the end of the 29th anyway. And we'll see y'all identifying. Sound good?